As the shutdown nods were in full effect in the capital of Moraz, a murder was scheduled to occur. The location was remote enough to obscure any evidence, the time of 02:30 hours late enough in the eternal night of Acedia for nobody to intervene.
Everything is going as planned,
Hellborn muttered on top of a beached cargo ship, once a fine vessel of the Morozite transport fleet, now serving as a urban monument of Acedia's indolence. Her imposing frame was obstructed by a silk robe, shrouding most of her silhouette. Only her divine short blade, an ornate weapon with a metal that shined like the stars in the sky, could be well perceived by anyone with a keen eye. Looking down to the empty docks of the frozen port, Hellborn admired the tall cranes and heavy equipment, so busy during the operational hours, now standing still like fingers, reaching from the hard concrete, struggling to break free from the grounds of Acedia. The only lights in their immediate vicinity came from the distant oil platforms, their blazing towers flickering like distant stars in the eternal night. The silence was broken by the sound of footsteps and metal violently scratching a metallic surface. Hellborn's attention shifted to the noise.
Approximately 200 meters southwest,
the angel estimated from the sounds merging not too far from her. The scratching metal made a noise impossible to tolerate, yet all too common for the people of Moraz. Shrouded Hunter looked down upon the source of said noise, and there she saw it. She was not alone. Near some containers, probably emptied of their goods, a Drakith dragged himself near them. The abomination of demonic flesh and steel seemed to be searching for something within the containers. The stalking Hellborn let out a sardonic smirk, visibly amused by the crawling mess of cables and legs. In the blink of an eye, a pair of wings emerged from her back, releasing sparks of pure energy in colors of green and blue. Her robe was removing the action, revealing an armor fit for a true warrior of the Heavenly Father, yet now repurposed by the Hunter for heretical missions. The blade shined in the darkness, bringing a warm and somewhat soothing light across the silent docks. Hellborn jumped from the cargo ship, gliding above rows of containers and vehicles, landing behind the unsuspecting Drakith. From her new position, she could get a better look at the demon. Under a tattered hood, two serpentine eyes glowed, joined by a dozen of cybernetic eyes attached to a pair of arachne adapters, letting out red beams in the direction of the angel. From his torso emerged various appendages, each having a different tool attached to them, from power saws to lockpicks. It was clear as day for Hellborn that the Drakith was out so late to steal any resources he could find. Another demonic scum deserving of death, so believed the angel. The angel cleared her throat, the short blade held with an iron grip, and pointed towards the looter.
"Gaze upon my form, you demonic vermin!"
shouted the angel with a voice filled with venom.
"Your tainted soul is undeserving of roaming these lands under the light of the Creator."
The Drakith looked perplexed at Hellborn, the appendages raised in self-defense, perhaps as an attempt to intimidate her. Through garbled static and electric sparks, a booming voice could be perceived, first in the demonic tongues of the Drakith, then in Hellborn's mother language.
"Cease your callous attitude, fallen one, and return to your dominion. I have crucial matters to attend to."
The angel's face shifted from arrogance to bitterness.
I am not surprised how your kind can find theft as a matter of importance. Your selfish mind can only desire to obtain what others have, never putting in the work to earn your existence.
"And your vain mind believes that justice will be made through spilling of blood,"
responded the Drakith through their translator. The demon turned away from the angel in disinterest, more focused on the containers nearby. There were 3 numbers, each one parallel to each other, roughly about 2 meters apart. The door of the containers were marked with symbols, yet the darkness was too great for Hellborn to understand them and their meaning. Nothing else stood out regarding the containers, yet the Drakith, as much as was concealed by the mechanical augmentations, was visibly distressed. The garbled static spoke once more with a mix of both fear and anger.
"This is your final warning, Angel. Return to your dominion."
Hellborn rose her blade.
"Then you shall find retribution through death,"
she shouted, charging at the mechanical demon with full force. Her wings cut into the very air. The Drakith's many technological appendages shielded his organic frame, creating a barrier between the rapidly approaching blade and his torso. The holy weapon, although effective against demonic presences, was cast back by the appendages. Hellborn's charge being deviated by the Drakith's free hand, pushing her to his left and up into the sky. The Angel halted her rush a few meters above the ground thanks to her wingspan, causing a gust of air powerful enough that it pushed back onto the containers. Looking back at her adversary, Hellborn raised her blade into the sky without stars, shouting praises to her creator in the ancient Enochian tongues. In the meantime, the Drakith's appendages lifted the abomination from the ground, the robe sharding him and fluttering to the wind. The Arachne adapters, crudely retrofitted with a quick response self-defense system, focused their respective beams of light and amplified them into beams of superheated light. Aimed at the Angel, the beams grew in intensity, and the demon let out a shout too agonizing guttural to have been generated by any vocal modulators. Hellborn finished with her chants and dived towards the demon with her blade in hand. In a flash of light, the two adversaries were standing behind each other. Her, with a deep burn upon her upper torso, spanning from her sternum to the right shoulder. He, with the adapters releasing surges of electricity and the mechanical appendages hanging from his body. Both were beaten up and bleeding, yet one was clearly suffering a fatal injury. The dripping stains of black blood on the Angel's blade were testimony to both the victor and the defeated. The Drakith collapsed on the cold ground, being held down by the augmentations that became too heavy for it to properly function. His weak arms reached for the wound, a gaping stab wound, torn from the demon's abdomen upwards, ending to its collarbone. A mixture of cooling liquids and blood dripped on the ground. His body began to disintegrate slowly but surely. The wound damaged critical hardware and major organs alike. The Drakith was sure of it. What would be a normal simple wound to fix with the assistance of an experimented medic was clearly going to be the end of the demon. Not through the deep cut of the blade, but to its origin, too alien for the Drakith to withstand. The edges of the stab wound were glimmering in a light purer than anything he witnessed in his short, pathetic life. For the demon, it was unbearable. For the Angel, it was pleasing. Hellborn turned to the crawling mess of wires and, although deeply wounded herself, she could not have been any more satisfied with the fight's conclusion. The thoughts flooding Hellborn's mind seeing the yet writhing demon would have been considered heretical, even for the Angels of Superbia. But for her, they were just. With a grandiose move of her arms, she raised the blade to the sky in a gesture of praise towards the high powers she knew for a fact were watching her. She laughed, for the spilling of demonic blood would grant her access to the heavens. She laughed, for the burnt wound on her chest would be cured by the Father's endless power. And she laughed, for her halo would be given back to her. The Drakith, however, did not find her schadenfreude to be satisfying. With his last powers, he let out an automated shriek, as garbled as broken as his injured body, either of agonizing pain or of unbound rage. Only a few words were said by the machine, as the laughs of his executioner flooded the mind of the demon.
There laid Oblius, lesser Drakith of Belphegor, sub-officer of the Leviathan sector's logistic departments, and a person that was denied all of his redemption within the ring he was raised to call home.
Hellborn looked down at the mangled corpse below her feet. "And I believed your kind was more resilient," she whispered.
Pathetic.
Her job here was done, so she prepared to take flight back to Superbia. But before she would begin her departure, a noise caught her attention. Something moved nearby, she was sure of it. Facing her blade forward, Hellborn looked around and figured out the source of the noise. She looked at the 3 containers that the demon was so interested in, and her thoughts were confirmed by the noise repeating. This time, it was louder, more akin to a blunt object hitting a metal. Then another, from a different container. And without any warning, the doors of the left container were broken by something inside, while the ones in the right container began melting down from an intense heat source. From both containers emerged different abominations of flesh and metal, each distinct in shapes and size. One was an industrial automaton, with fists large enough to break through metal. Another was a levitating torso, equipped with different power tools. Another was a machine with 8 legs, walking sideways at high speeds. All the machines came out, running away from the docks and into the endless night. Yet, from the central container, a frantic banging was still heard. Hellborn, confused by the act displayed in front of her, first began to feel an emotion a stranger to her, as if she may have committed something terrible. With shaky hands, she opened the doors of the container. Inside the container, dark silhouettes were crammed like sardines. One by one, they stepped outside the confinement, looking at Haverhill and walking away from the area. Some looked at her with disgust, others looked at her with hatred. The last one to come out, however, looked at her with a different emotion. A Draketh, visibly in the last years of her life. Held close to her chest was a younger demon, perhaps her progeny. A rare divergence among her kind, the woman had no visible augmentations, her 4 blue eyes looking at the angel with nothing short of pity. She joined the group of other demons and followed them into the blinding lights of Moraz, as well-behaved Asadians must. And so, the angel Haverhill was left alone with her thoughts. Using her holy blade as a light source, she looked at the marks written on the doors of the containers. On the left one, a mark with 4 claws was emerging from a circle. On the right one, a mark of overlapping triangles on molten steel. And in the middle, as clear as the days Haverhill once saw in the heavens, the circle, triangle and the lines of the Ark of Superbia. And that's when it all made sense to her. What she had witnessed was the attempt of a rogue sub-officer to oversee the escape of some Moraz's unlucky denizens from the iron grasp of Assadia, demons and automata alike that tried to get away from the decadent environment and strict controls of Belphegor's realm, hoping to start anew in the rings of greed, lust and pride respectively. People that had perhaps their only chance at a new life was taken away from them by a zealous angel blinded by her own ideals, to the death of the one demon that was able to look past his directives and aid the ones in need. Haverhill dropped her blade, losing her grip after the shock of the revelation. The blade yet had a faint glow in the dark, its beautiful gold contrasting with the blood of Oblius with the darker and older spots. How many tragedies has she left behind? How many deaths could have been avoided if it was not for her and her misguided efforts of seeking redemption for the eyes that may have never looked at her? The angel looked down at the blade, glancing at it with fearful eyes. The sparks of Haverhill's holy sword were fading away, and the metal from which the blade was forged began to rust and crumple until a decayed piece of metal replaced the once glorious blade. The handle of the sword, meticulously crafted by the Ossifex from a proud heavenly tree, started to moisten and darken. Small, yet voracious termites emerged from the wood of the blade, devouring it until nothing but golden ornaments attached to rotten wood remained. Haverhill knew something was wrong, yet she refused to believe it. She spread her wings, a pair of metallic appendages, and prepared to fly away, leaving Moraz behind her. Haverhill's wings, of radiating gold, were now slowly changing to a dark grey. Every attempt to move them became more difficult, as each feather began to freeze in place with a deafening screech. Their once overarching dominance was now silenced, replaced by the cold murmur of an angel losing its ability to fly. Her hands lost their colors, the monochrome tone spreading further to her body like a virus, eating her very essence of existence. Her legs became immobile, freezing into place as if they belonged to an ancient statue. For the first time, Haverhill felt the weight of her wings becoming more and more intolerable. The angel felt the crushing weight of her wings, pushing her into the ground. And so, she fell once more from grace, her knees being met with the cold, harsh asphalt, facing the corpse of the darkest Haverhill not too long called an enemy, a scum of vermin. As hours passed by, the fallen angel Haverhill became nothing more than an unfortunate memory. Where there was once a revered warrior of the heavens, now laid a broken statue of her, facing the twisted body of an unfortunate Draketh. Her weapon was reduced to nothing more than a rusted piece of metal. The last visible symbol of divinity long passed were her wings, arching from her back with an eerie presence. For the unknowing, it was a flawed work of art. Yet, for the long-lost siblings of the divine, it spoke of a cautionary tale. They knew that somewhere deep within its marble confines, something was still alive, begging to be released from the prison that is now their body. An angel has succumbed to their despair and therefore went against their very existence. Especially within the exile that other dark realms, a loss as severe as the true death of an angel could never be recovered. With the commencing of the Moraz service period, the remains of an angel unknown and important to the Draketh kind were rescued and prepared to be shipped to Superbia for the traditional burials of the Dark Angels. The Draketh once named Oblius no longer figures within Assadian documentation. For the treason against the Morazian creed, all his possessions have been returned to the Machinarium Dominus. The sound of cranes being activated marked the beginning of another day. Hello, my name is Fern and I'm the co-founder of Studio Hex and the co-creator of Hellborn, the game and setting that this short story was based on. This small piece of story is the prologue to our book Hellborn, a tabletop role-playing game set in a cyberpunk hell. We have been working on it for almost 4 years, and since we're slowly wrapping up its development, we're trying various things to promote our game. If you enjoyed this short story and want to learn more about our game and our world, make sure to subscribe and check the various links that I've listed in the video's description, and to make sure to share the video with any friends that might find this sort of stuff interesting. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned, since we're preparing a small video explaining the setting more in depth as well as the game's rules. Until next time!